Okay, so we've got this excerpt from N.T. Wright, from How God Became King, and wow, it really makes you think like maybe we've been missing a big part of the Gospels this whole time.
Yeah, it's like we focus on all the big things, right? The miracles, the
hmm
crucifixion, the resurrection, but we kind of skip over the main thing he was talking about.
The main thing being,
The kingdom of God, like actually proclaiming it's here. It's not just some future promise. It's happening now.
okay, hold on, rewind that a bit.
Yeah.
Because when I hear kingdom, I think, harps and clouds, not like a here and now kind of thing.
Right, and that's exactly what Wright says we get wrong. We hear kingdom of heaven and we think escaping this world, not transforming it.
So it's not about being a good person to get into heaven. It's about,
It's about bringing heaven down to earth. Remember that line in the Lord's Prayer, your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. That's not some far-off dream, that's a call to action.
okay, but if this kingdom message is so central, how did we miss it? Like, was it written in invisible ink or something?
Well, Wright Sears argues it's a few things. Partly it's the way we've read the Bible, like
Mm.
Paul's letters are super important, but we can get so caught up in his stuff about salvation that we miss how the Gospels present it.
So it's like listening to one instrument and missing the whole orchestra.
Exactly. And then you've got the whole enlightenment thing, reason and progress. That made the idea of God ruling on earth seem kind of outdated.
Yeah, like who wants to go back to the Dark Ages?
Right. And nobody's arguing for a theocracy either. But that's the thing. The Gospels aren't talking about some oppressive regime. It's a totally different kind of kingdom.
Okay, so if it's not harps and clouds and it's not a dictatorship, what does this kingdom actually look like?
Well, think about it. What kind of king lets himself be crucified?
Good point.
Yeah.
Not exactly your typical power move.
Yeah.
So where does the cross fit into all of this?
That's the paradox, right? The Gospels don't separate the cross from the kingdom. In fact, to really get it, we need to see the Gospels as the climax of the whole Old Testament story.
Okay, you've lost me.
It's like Wright says the Gospels are like the Wicked to the Old Testament's Wizard of Oz. They give you the backstory, the why behind it all.
So you're saying we need to understand Israel to understand Jesus?
Exactly. Remember that genealogy at the beginning of Matthew? It's not just a family tree, it's a statement. It's saying all of Israel's history has been leading up to this moment.
It's like that saying, the longest journey begins with a single step. Except here it's like thousands of years and countless steps culminating
In Jesus. He's not some break from Israel's story. He's the fulfillment of it. You see, Israel was meant to be a light to the nations, a kingdom of priests showing everyone what God's reign looks like. But they failed again and again.
that whole cycle of screwing up and being forgiven and then screwing up again.
Exactly. And that's where Jesus comes in. He's the true Israel, the one who actually embodies God's promises, the one who takes on the mission they couldn't achieve.
So he's like picking up the baton where they dropped it and run with it.
And running straight towards a finish line no one expected.
Okay, how does that work? I'm not following.
Think about the prophecies. They talked about a Messiah, a king who would save Israel, but they also talked about a suffering servant. Remember Isaiah's man of sorrows? Not exactly the triumphant warrior king everyone was picturing.
So it's like we've been so focused on Easter Sunday that we've missed the point of Good Friday.
Exactly. We celebrate the victory of the resurrection, but we forget the path that leads there. This upside-down power, this conquering through surrender, that's how God's kingdom breaks through. It's one thing to say God's kingdom, but it's a whole other thing to actually picture it. Like, what does that even look like?
Yeah, I'm still stuck on the whole harp playing on a cloud image.
Well, luckily, Wright gives us these tools. He calls them speakers.
Speakers, like a sound system.
Kind of, yeah, like 4 different lenses for looking at the kingdom story, each one highlighting a different angle.
Okay, so walk me through it again. What are the 4 speakers?
Well, the first one we already talked about. It's the story of Israel fulfilled.
Right, so Jesus is like the ultimate insider. He's not ditching Judaism. He's taking it to a whole new level. What's next?
The second speaker is God's presence returning.
Like the Shekinah, that whole God dwelling in the temple thing?
Exactly. But the Gospels are saying Jesus is the new temple. God's not confined to a building anymore. He's present in a person.
Which is why the temple veil tearing when Jesus dies is such a big deal.
Yeah.
It's like the old way is over. God's presence is everywhere now.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting. The third speaker is the story of the Jewish Messiah.
Okay, see, this is where I get tripped up. Messiah means king,
Right.
conqueror or liberator, someone who's going to set up a very visible, very powerful kingdom.
Right. And that's
Yeah.
exactly what the Jewish people were expecting. But then Jesus comes along and flips the script.
Instead of conquer Rome, it's love your enemies.
Yeah. It's this upside-down kingdom where power looks like weakness and victory comes through surrender.
Not exactly your average revolution. Which brings us to speaker number 4.
Right. Speaker number 4 is God's purpose being accomplished.
So like the whole plan of salvation, the whole point of everything hinges on Jesus.
And not just on him existing, but on the cross. This one event changes everything.
It's like that butterfly effect thing, right? One small change leading to these massive consequences.
But here's the thing. When you put all 4 speakers together, it's not just a butterfly effect, it's a symphony.
Okay, I'm liking this analogy. So Jesus, the fulfillment of Israel, the embodiment of God's presence, the true Messiah, his death on the cross is like the climax of the whole thing.
Exactly. And it all comes back to this idea of the kingdom. It's not some far-off dream. It's breaking into the here and now, even in the midst of suffering.
Okay, but if Jesus is really God, why didn't he just use his power to get out of the whole trial thing?